I drove over 300 kilometers crossing the Canada to America border to catch one of the two-night only US screenings of the brand new Digimon film, Digimon Adventure 02 The Beginning. I wanted to see this thing in a theater with fellow Digimon fans, witnessing what Digimon had to show to the world in 2023 on the biggest screen possible. I bring up my road trip to say that I went out of my way to watch this movie that I went in wanting to be wowed and amazed. This isn't the review I expected to be writing. If you watched and loved 02 The Beginning, I'm extremely happy for you, and I'm not here to invalidate your positive feelings, but for me, this is possibly the worst Digimon release I've engaged with since getting back into the franchise in 2015. There are things I like about 02 The Beginning, but they're outweighed and drowned out by my disappointment with the final film. Let me be clear that none of my issues with this movie are with the canon, the timeline, how it relates to previous origins, or how it relates to the 02 epilogue. Digimon Adventure canon has been a nightmare for decades, and that's not a problem for me personally. If those things do bother you, I think that's fair, but the negative elements of this review are not because I'm hung up on some timeline contradictions. That's not what this is. As a Digimon 02 story, I think the movie fails its characters, its actors, and its fans by robbing them all of compelling material, giving all of its focus to a brand new character. As a Digimon story in general, I think it fails to deliver on all of what makes people care about the series. It strives to give us one thing, and that's story. Certainly an emphasis on story and mature stories is what created a lot of lifelong Digimon fans and kept them around, but we would be lying to ourselves if we said we didn't hope to see evolutions and larger-than-life battles in a Digimon story, especially a theatrically released one, which is an extremely rare occurrence. For the purpose of this video, let's loosely agree that the things we like about the Digimon anime are threefold. 1. The characters/storytelling, 2. Evolving monsters, and 3. Battle/combat. After all, this is a shonen toei monster battle franchise. I think it would be dishonest to say that Digimon fans don't come to the series for evolutions and battles in addition to story. So let's talk all three factors of what make us love Digimon, starting with the battles. 02 The Beginning has no battles. There is some light action with something resembling a battle in the final act, in which the characters race to reach a destination and face what I would call light pushback from something resembling an antagonist. Here they swerve and dodge, slice a few obstacles to clear a path, and a couple beams are fired, but these 3-ish minutes of action are all you can expect. I found this to be utterly baffling, and I've had over 3 days to find a way to rationalize this decision, but really can't, at least not for me. I can already see the comments saying that this film was focused on story and therefore battles weren't necessary, but to that I would say that the best Digimon stories of all time are told in between epic battles or in tandem with battles, with major emotional beats being tied to the combat either in symbolism or timing. I almost want to say it's bold that the movie denied its audience any meaningful combat, but to me it felt more like the filmmakers testing to see if they could get away with not scripting in, choreographing, and animating battles to find out if audiences would still support and praise the film. I don't want to get into spoilers, but I can think of at least 3 locations where action could have fit into the film for a more well-rounded Digimon experience and movie-going experience. Next, onto evolutions. My real issue is not with whether or not brand new forms were included, though I do think that's an issue too, but rather how poorly the Digimon evolutions we did get were utilized. In literally every instance of evolution featured in 02 The Beginning, the partner Digimon are simply used as taxis to transport characters to or from the top of Tokyo Tower. We saw Paildremon's flashy evolution in the trailers for this movie, so it's not a spoiler to tell you Paildremon is in the film. When I was sitting there watching, the first red flag I really had in the film was when Paildremon is first summoned in Act 1 simply as a means to fly some of the team up to Tokyo Tower. In the best Digimon stories, evolution is this epic metaphor for overcoming some obstacle, for persevering. Really, in any of these shonen battle anime involving transformations, the context matters. If Goku's hair just turned gold one day, it wouldn't matter the way it did when the Frieza saga crescendoed with Super Saiyan unlocking after immeasurable loss and struggle. With Paildremon, I understand that Ken and Davis already had access to Paildremon based on the events of the original series, and that struggle and perseverance occurred there, but to summon and call on this iconic form only to fly 3 kids up to Tokyo Tower felt like the kind of nostalgia bait fan service that I've seen some fans of the movie praise it for not relying on. If you've seen the other evolutions from the trailers, you've seen them all, and sadly they are literally all used to get the human characters to or from Tokyo Tower. So although this film has some story chops, which we'll get to next, as a Digimon packaged product, this thing is not well-rounded. It has story, and a dark one at that, but deliberately brings nothing to the table as far as action and evolution are concerned. The story is easily the best thing this film has going for it, but even then I'm not as hot on this story as some others appear to be. In short, I don't think it was so strong that it warranted the total de-emphasis of the other elements of what make Digimon special. I'm simplifying here, and forgive me because again this is spoiler free, but the story is essentially that a new character is introduced, tells the characters and the audience something that goes completely against what they believe and have seen to be true, and then it turns out the new character and this revelation weren't true after all, so what we believed to be true in the first place is still true. That's really reductive, I know, but that's more or less what happened underneath the flashbacks, the exposition, and the multiple trips up and down Tokyo Tower. The thing we believed at the start of the film is still the thing that's true. Rui Louis, or Louis in the English dub, is genuinely a welcome addition to the Adventure universe. I don't have too many problems with this character, and out of the new Digidestin introduced in the last few of these films, like Minoa in Kizuna and Mako in Try, Louis is my favorite movie-exclusive newcomer, though still behind Willis from Hurricane Touchdown / Digimon the movie. His backstory is dark and compelling, but the problem is that we learn it through Louis spending roughly 45 minutes of the film just telling it to us, while the 02 cast sits in the dark, largely silent, interjecting only on rare occasions to say, wow, that's unreal, or how can that be? There's a lot of talking in this movie. Part of me feels like 02 The Beginning would be better off as some kind of stage play, maybe a light novel or audio drama on podcast services. Frankly, the medium matters, and I just don't believe this story is a good fit for film. Bizarrely, there are about 4 locations in the movie. The glory of animation is limitless potential. You can go anywhere, show anything, but if you've seen the trailer, you've seen every locale in this movie. If you exclude the opening, which cuts to the gang living their lives, which was put up on YouTube, by the way, and if you exclude the ramen shop, which is only there for the opening, there are only 3 locations in this movie: the computer lab, Louis' home in the past, and the area around Tokyo Tower, be it day or night. For a film that advertised itself as a 02 story to get butts in seats, I was surprised at how little interest it had in the core 02 cast and in the surrounding tertiary 02 cast. A big part of 02 and the plot of this film is the idea of Digidestined all around the globe, you know, the world tour arc. In early promo materials and in the film, we cut around to reaction shots of Digidestined from around the world, some that we met in the 02 world tour, but their involvement in the movie is limited to them looking at screens. And then there's the core cast. The 02 cast of Davis, Ken, Yoli, Cody, plus Kari and TK are only slightly more involved in the plot than you or I am sitting in our seats watching. They have some involvement in the finale, sure, in the sequence I mentioned resembling a battle but not quite being one, but the movie has almost no interest in them. In terms of seeing what these characters are doing in their late teens and early 20s, all we get are the tiny check-ins during the opening that you can again watch on YouTube. I never in a million years expected this, but I genuinely think I got more from the 02 cast in Last Evolution Kizuna than I did in 02 The Beginning. In that film, though they were clearly the B plot, we saw the boys eating ramen, we saw their reunion with Yoli outside the museum, and them doing detective work around the plaza, TK and Kari's dynamics with their siblings, and then of course the 02 crew actually fighting in the climax of the film. That was weirdly a lot compared to this movie, which is supposed to be their movie. To this day, I think about the scenes in Last Evolution Kizuna where Matt stares into a music shop window before continuing to walk on, where Tai is working his dead-end job at a pachinko center, and when the two of them are getting beers at an izakaya later. There's nothing resembling that for the 02 kids in this film, nothing to humanize them or give you a sense of life after their magical childhood. As a massive fan of 02, I couldn't help but feel robbed of a real check-in with these characters. Again, not going into spoilers, I want to say it's fascinating what this movie does and does not decide to care about in terms of wider Digimon lore. The wish that may everyone in the world have a Digimon. This is all digging deep into a lore concept that's quietly existed for decades. This is admittedly very cool, but the film's devotion to this deep-cut lore tidbit, one that I believe most casual Digimon fans aren't even aware of, I'm not sure if I'll ever agree with the film's desire to explain this so intensely. I just don't know if we needed this story, in other words. I'll start to wrap this up with a few final points. I was warned ahead of time about the lack of action in this one, not to expect grand new evolutions, and about the focus on Louis over the 02 kids. I was still baffled, disappointed, and listen, I like weird, dark stuff. Digimon Survive is my new favorite Digimon video game. I was the kind of kid who liked Majora's Mask more than Ocarina of Time because it was weird as hell. Comparing 02 The Beginning to Last Evolution Kizuna, because they were made by the same animation studio and share a director, it's like Kizuna is the Ocarina of Time and 02 The Beginning is the Majora's Mask. But imagine Majora's Mask had no gameplay and was just you pressing the A button to move through the dialogue boxes. Frankly, I just don't think this movie helped the Digimon franchise at all. If anything, I think it hurts it. Diehards will say it's for the fans, but I'd invite you to reconsider and broaden your definition of fans. There were people in my theater who were excited to see Digimon on the big screen again who were incredibly disappointed when exiting the theater. The person I saw this with considers themselves a casual fan, but watched the first 4 seasons of Digimon growing up, watched Try and Last Evolution Kizuna, and thought this was the worst Digimon thing they'd seen in years. That's a casual fan feeling that way, and me, as something of a more hardcore fan, I also thought it wasn't very good. I know we're only a small sample size, but if this Louis story was one of many Digimon 02 stories we were getting all the time, I could see the beginning being a really unique Dark Horse fan favorite, but sadly I do think the medium matters, context matters, and as the only Digimon film in over 3 years, the last anime project we currently have announced, and the only dedicated 02 check-in we've had in over 20 years, to me me, this was a total misfire and a massive disappointment. I often think about long-running IP like live service video games. When you put out a content update, obviously you want to make your long-time late game players happy, but it's not enough to simply cater to existing players without enticing and astonishing new players. Otherwise, your player base will slowly diminish and your game dies. Your update needs to make late game players happy and also welcome new players in the door. Digimon Zero to the Beginning is uninviting to new players and it's divisive amongst long-time dedicated players. Lastly, I want to say this. In the theater, before the film started, there was a nice short greeting from the film's director, Taguchi-san. He introed the film a bit and said that the story they wanted to tell was only possible with the Zero Two cast. I really couldn't disagree more. There is an interesting Louis story here that could have been inserted into many other Digimon seasons and Digimon casts. While it's maybe true that the Zero Two kids were best suited to back up Louis here, given Ken's history with darkness and the way that the Zero Two Digimon hang out with their kids so often, this premise could have been massaged a little bit and easily fitted into a Tamers movie, an Adventure 2020 movie, even a Ghost Game movie. Honestly, I think Louis and Ukomon maybe would have been a better fit for the Ghost Game universe. This is sadly an even bigger disappointment than Digimon Ghost Game to me, a series that I still enjoyed watching most weeks despite critiquing a lot of its structure and story decisions. This film I really can't defend, can't recommend to anyone who isn't a hardcore, serious Digimon fan, and I'll only go back to watch this if I need to reference scenes for future video essays because the idea of watching this again does not entice me at all. The next video will be a spoiler discussion, so I won't have to dance around plot elements like I did here. It'll also be nice to have a few days to read some of your thoughts and respond if something is really thought-provoking. I also plan to do an ending explained video since I think the last few minutes of the film are quite interesting and actually worth discussing. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember that if you enjoy the film, my review should not take away from the happiness you feel. I wanted to like this, I really did. Take care and we'll talk spoilers in the next video.